We know 4 and 5 are congruent, but what about angles 1 and 2? Can you tie those together? Now, when they don't give you enough information, there's a couple things so far that we've been looking for. Linear pairs, because we can just have that in our picture. The other one is actually what we're going to use here. So what else do we have in our picture that, and if you want to pause the video to think about it, or look back at another video, feel free. But as we look here, what we need to see is we actually have some vertical angles. So if we want to say the vertical angles are equal, we can use in a definition of vertical angles, or we can say they're congruent. If you want to use a replacement rule, you need to say the measures are equal, definition of vertical angles. But if we can get this laid out just right, we can actually use the transitive property. I'm going to show you that. Maybe you do this a couple different ways so you can have some options, whichever way you think would be best, or you think that you follow the best. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off using the theorem. I'm going to use the vertical angle theorem. And that says they're congruent. So I can say angles 1 and 4 are congruent. I can say 2 and 5 are congruent. But I want to tie these together just right. So if I go from 4 to 5, I need to be able to go from there, from angle 5 to angle 2. So now if 4 is to 5, 5 is to 2, I am going to be able to say 4 is to 2. Now I don't want to say 4 is to 2. I want to say 1 is to 2. So I actually want to start with 1. I want to go from 1 to angle 4. And I have this laid out just right so that if we start at 1, that goes from 4. And then from 4, we go to 5, and then from 5 to 2, just in that right order, so that the ending of this congruency statement, that third one, is the beginning of that first one, and then that ending is the beginning of the next one. It's the transitive property. If A equals B, and B equals C, and C equals D, and D equals, as on you go, then A equals the last one, then A equals C, or A equals D, whichever one we're ending on. So the one I'm starting with is angle 1, goes to 4, then from 4 to 5, and then from 5 to, and we end up ending at 2. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, and if you get that just right, you can use the transitive property of congruency. Be done. The other thing you could do is use replacement rules. So maybe you're done, maybe not. Maybe you don't follow that very well and you have a hard time making it line up. So what we could do instead is, well, given that we had, change that to equals, right? Definition of congruent angles. If you know the angles are congruent, then all the measures are the same. Well, there is only one measure, so we go ahead and say, well, then that one measure is equal. That's what it means to be congruent. Well, we can do the same thing with the vertical angle theorem, or if you wanted to use the definition of vertical angles, we could have done that instead as well. Definition of vertical angles. We could have said, I don't know where that 4 went, so 4 equals 5. Sorry about that. You're probably wondering what happened there. So measure of angle 4 would equal measure of angle 5. We could say, well, if angles 1 and 4 are the same, I can say they're equal because they're vertical angles. Let's see, 2 and 5, it doesn't matter what order I really use it in. And then what I could do is go on from there and use replacement rule. But we couldn't use replacement rule if I had done the theorem, or if I had left angle 4 and 5 congruent, because to meet the conditions of the replacement rule, the measures have to be equal. And if you look on your sheet, you'll see that. So with congruency, some things come up when we have like triangles and you have some more complicated congruent statements. We've got to do it a little bit differently. We've got to have the measures equal to be able to replace. That we'd kind of start off like I did down there. So as it is, if you want to try to change them to equals, then try to substitute something. Say, well, let's see, maybe I can replace angle 4 with measure of angle 1. Maybe I can replace angle 5. Well, that can be replaced with measure of angle 2. And then we just change it back to congruency, and that would work. But you have a couple different options there to prove angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, whichever you follow the best.